No one believed in humans anymore. Not really. They were stories told in hushed tones, myths from the days when the stars were still wild and uncharted. The young ones laughed them off, tales of creatures so stubborn, so violent, and so wildly unpredictable that the galaxy itself was said to have pushed them out, erasing their existence like a bad memory. The elders, though? They never laughed. They didn't speak of humans often, but when they did, there was always a pause in their voice, a flicker in their eyes, like they remembered something they'd rather forget. Among the Azari people, the story of humans was like a bedtime ghost tale. "Don't lie, or the humans will come back," they'd say to naughty children. "Don't cheat the trade markets, or you'll end up like the Var Dominion. The humans didn't spare them either." But that was all it was. Folk tale. Until the silence broke. It started with a signal. Just a weak transmission picked up on the outer rim of Sector X-12, close to what was known as the dead space. A transmission that repeated one phrase over and over: "This is Earth Command. We are returning." Most brushed it off as static, a prank, maybe a leftover automated probe from a forgotten war. But the Zarn Intelligence Collective picked it up and didn't like what they heard. Machines don't fear stories, unless they come with data. And this signal carried metadata that didn't make sense. The code embedded in it was human, or at least something terrifyingly close. So the collective sent scouts, then battlecruisers, then an entire drone fleet. None of them came back. That's when things got serious. The Galactic Accord met in emergency session, the first time in over 6,000 cycles. Every species showed up, even the ones who hadn't left their homeworlds in centuries. They debated. They denied. They panicked. And then the warships arrived. They didn't look like anything the galaxy had ever seen. No curved elegance, no polished chrome, no unnecessary design. Just dark, massive monsters, engine trails that burned like dying suns, hulls that looked like they'd been carved from black stone. No insignias, no greetings, no demands. They didn't need to speak. One by one, orbital defenses fell. Silent, precise, not just destroyed, humiliated. Whole fleets blinked out of the stars without ever getting a lock. AI cores went dark. Fleets surrendered before even seeing the enemy. Rumors spread like fire. They don't use shields. They are shields. They upload viruses through quantum space. They took down a worm gate without firing a shot. By the time the ships reached the capital world of Velmora Prime, the galaxy wasn't laughing anymore. And then came the message. One broadcast in every language, every code, every neural interface and auditory channel across the stars. It said, "You erased us. You hunted us. You wrote our extinction into your history books. We were myths to you. Now we are memory. We are back, and we do not forget." Panic turned into terror, but amidst the chaos, some remembered. The old Azari priestess, eyes clouded with age, whispered to no one in particular. They warned us. The humans don't come to talk. They come to finish. Far away, on a mining station orbiting the ice planet Tyrix, a young mechanic stared out the viewport. His hands trembled as dozens of black silhouettes cut across the stars like blades. He'd grown up thinking humans were just a joke. Now he couldn't stop shaking. The silence after that message was worse than the destruction. Velmora Prime stood still. Billions of citizens held their breath, staring at the sky like waiting for a second sunrise. Only this time, they knew it wouldn't bring warmth. The human fleet didn't fire, not at first. They hovered, watching, like predators studying prey. The Accord's top minds scrambled, trying to understand their intentions, but none of their models worked. Humans weren't acting with logic, or at least not the kind galactic civilizations understood. "They're waiting for something," said Admiral Karen of the Threx Dominion. maybe surrender. But others disagreed. The humans didn't come for surrender. They came for something else. High Chancellor Dovrax, leader of the Galactic Accord, ordered a message to be sent. Diplomatic, respectful, desperate. It began with, "We welcome you back," and ended with, "Let us coexist in peace." The humans didn't answer. Instead, one of their ships broke formation. It moved slowly, deliberately, toward the moon of Velmora. The moon held the Accord's War Museum, a place dedicated to past conflicts, including the so-called human cleansing, an event now known to be far less one-sided than records claimed. The ship didn't fire at the moon. It opened a bay door. A single object dropped. No weapon, no bomb. A statue. It landed hard enough to shake seismic sensors across the hemisphere. When drones approached, they saw it clearly. An obsidian figure, shaped like a human warrior, armored in old Terran design. At its feet, engraved in flawless common galactic script, were 6 words. "We bury the lies with fire." That was when the first real wave began. Human drop pods screamed through the atmosphere. Not thousands, millions. Black spheres slicing through clouds, landing across military outposts, communication relays, old battlegrounds. Each carried 1 or 2 soldiers, tall, armored, faceless behind reflective visors. They didn't speak. They didn't broadcast. They just moved with terrifying precision. And they knew the terrain. Every bunker, every shield pattern, every emergency protocol, because humans never forgot what was done to them, and they never stopped planning for payback. Admiral Karen launched a counterattack from orbit. Her cruisers opened fire, sending plasma bolts toward the drop pod zones. But nothing hit. The humans' ships projected some kind of distortion, a black mist that bent light and signals. Her own fleet systems began glitching. One by one, the ships turned cold. No explosion. Just silence. Inside the Accord war room, panic turned into paralysis. Ministers shouted. Generals wept. Chancellor Dovrax stood frozen, watching as his empire unraveled, not through negotiation or siege, but through a methodical unraveling. The worst part? There were no demands. The humans weren't here for territory. They weren't here for reparations. They were here to erase the myth, to remind the galaxy. We were never your story. You were part of ours. And in the mining station above Tyrix, the young mechanic, Rez, found himself drafted by a force he didn't understand. The humans hadn't touched Tyrix yet, but their ships hung above the planet like executioners waiting for the rope to swing. Rez watched as the local governor tried to send messages to the human ships. No response. Then came a flicker on the screen. A single word. Survivors. No one knew what it meant, but Rez felt something in his gut. This wasn't a war of revenge. It was a reckoning. The word survivors didn't make sense at first. It hung on the monitors like a warning written in blood. Cryptic, cold, final. People across the station whispered theories. Maybe the humans were identifying themselves. Maybe they were looking for their own kind left behind. Or maybe, and this sent chills down Rez's spine, they were searching for collaborators, those who had helped erase them. Tyrix had always been a backwater planet. Icy, isolated, only good for mining rare crystals. It wasn't part of the human cleansing wars, at least not directly, but after that message the governor's face went pale. He locked himself in the control room and refused to speak to anyone. Rez watched the broadcasts like everyone else. Footage leaked from Velmora showed human infantry, silent, fluid, almost like ghosts, moving through cities untouched by fire. They didn't destroy everything, just certain things. Statues, libraries, government buildings, especially anything that contained official history. Entire archives were erased, wiped clean, not hacked, not burned, erased. No trace left, no backups. It was like the humans were removing the lie at its roots. Back on Tyrix, tension thickened. Ships stopped coming. Communications were jammed. The station's upper class started hoarding supplies. Armed guards appeared at exits. The miners, people like Rez, were told to keep working. But no one believed in the system anymore. One night, Rez was fixing a damaged coolant line in sub-level 9 when he stumbled on an old maintenance panel behind a bulkhead. It hadn't been used in years. Curious, he pried it open and found something strange. A body, or at least what was left of one. Mummified, wrapped in rags. The bones were strange, longer limbs, broader shoulders. A single dog tag hung from its neck. J. Navarro, United Terran. Front Rez stumbled back, heart thudding. A human? He didn't call security. He didn't even tell his co-workers. Something in him screamed to keep quiet. He took the tag and left the body untouched. Later that night, he stared at it in his bunk, tracing the letters with his thumb. How had a human corpse ended up on Tyrix? The next morning, the human ships moved. One descended into the lower atmosphere, directly above Tyrix Station. No weapons deployed, no troops dropped, just a signal. "We are aware." 3 words, that was it. But those 3 words shattered whatever illusion remained. The governor tried to flee. His shuttle exploded before it left the hangar. Then came the second broadcast. It was a recording, years old, buried in a file that shouldn't have existed anymore. The governor, much younger, laughing in a bar on Velmora, bragging about cleaning up a crash site, one where some filthy Terrans tried to hide. He spoke of burying bodies in Tyrix tunnels. Rez watched in stunned silence. So did everyone else. Suddenly, Tyrix wasn't innocent. It wasn't a forgotten rock. It was a graveyard, a secret one. And the humans knew. Rez understood now what survivors meant. The humans weren't looking for allies. They were looking for the truth. For those who survived the cleansing. For the ones who hid. And maybe, just maybe, for those willing to remember. Outside, the human ship hovered, unmoving. Its black hull gleamed with frost and firelight. Rez stared up through the cracked dome of the station and whispered, "What do you want from us?" The answer didn't come in words. That night, every system on the station shut down, and a figure appeared in sub-level 9. Alone. Human. He stood there, surrounded by silence, like the whole world had stopped spinning just to watch. Rez had never seen a human before. Not in real life. Only in old, distorted images, tall shadows in dusty archives, faces blurred by time or erased entirely. But this one was real. He wasn't wearing the black armor like the others. Just a simple dark coat, worn boots, a utility belt, and something strange on his shoulder. A symbol, 2 broken wings, wrapped around a burning star. His face was unreadable, calm, but with a weight behind his eyes, like he carried 1,000 stories no one wanted to hear. Rez didn't move, didn't breathe. The human raised a hand, not in threat, but something closer to acknowledgement, maybe even peace. Then he spoke. "You found Navarro." Rez's throat tightened. The dog tag. The body. How did he— "You carry it," the man added, glancing at Rez's chest. "We can sense our own." Rez pulled the tag from under his shirt, slow and careful, like it might explode. The man took a step forward, boots scraping against the metal floor of sub-level 9. "He wasn't supposed to be here," Rez managed to say. "None of us were supposed to be anywhere," the man said, voice low. "Not after what they did." Rez swallowed hard. "Why are you here? I mean, why now?" The human's gaze drifted upward, as if staring through the layers of steel and rock, all the way to the stars. "Because it's time," he said. "The truth rots in shadows. We're here to burn it into the light." Rez's mind raced. Tyrix was nothing. Forgotten. It didn't matter in the galactic scheme. But now it was on the map, and not in a good way. "They'll fight you," Rez said. "The Accord. They'll send everything they have." "They already did," the man replied flatly. "And they lost." Rez's stomach turned. "So what now? You just erase us, like they did to you?" The man looked at him, eyes steady. "That depends. Were you part of the lie, or part of the silence?" Rez didn't have an answer for that. He didn't even know what it meant. All he knew was he was a mechanic who found a corpse he shouldn't have, and now he was standing in front of something bigger than anything he'd ever imagined. The man turned. "There are more like you, ones who've seen the cracks, the holes in the stories." He paused. "We're not here to conquer. We're here to correct. And if that means burning down the systems that kept the lie alive, so be it." Before Rez could respond, the lights flickered. Then a siren. A low, moaning tone that hadn't been heard in decades. Unidentified life-form breach. Central AI offline. Emergency lockdown initiated. Rez's comm buzzed. Voices screamed across the channel. "They're inside. Not soldiers, civilians. They're opening doors from the inside." Rez looked at the man. "What did you do?" "I didn't do anything," the human said quietly. "They did. Your people. The ones who remembered. The ones who waited." A second figure stepped out from the shadows behind him. A woman. Shorter, sharper. Scars down her neck. Her eyes locked onto Rez. "He's clean," she said. The man nodded. "Then let's show him." Rez followed them. He didn't know why. Curiosity? Fear? Maybe something deeper. They led him through old mining shafts, into sealed chambers no one had entered in years. There, behind layers of rusted doors, sat relics of a past denied. Terran banners, crates of forbidden data, and in the middle, an old communications rig, blinking softly. The woman touched it gently. "We've been waiting a long time," she said, "but it's not just about revenge." She turned to Rez. "It's about memory." Rez had never seen tech like this before. The room was buried deep, far below Tyrix's mapped levels. It was ancient, sealed behind bulkheads coated in frost and carbon scoring, like someone had tried to destroy it, then gave up. The rig itself looked half dead, barely humming, with wires snaking out like veins into old crystal cores. And still it worked. The woman knelt beside the console. Her fingers danced across the dusty interface with practiced ease, waking it from its coma. Rez watched in silence, unsure if he was a prisoner or a witness. "This was Navarro's final transmission point," she said without looking up. "The last thing he did before he died was send a signal. We think it never reached anyone. Until now." Rez finally spoke. "Why would he come here? Why Tyrix?" The man, who still hadn't shared his name, leaned against the wall, arms folded. "Because Tyrix was neutral, a blind spot. And because someone here helped him." Rez blinked. "Helped him?" The woman nodded. "Navarro didn't crash here by accident. He was guided, smuggled through mining lanes off the record. Someone in your station risked everything to protect him. We're here to finish what they started." Rez felt like the air had thinned. None of this made sense. His whole life had been about keeping things running. Pipes, lights, machinery, not uncovering buried history, not standing in forgotten catacombs with the ghosts of a species erased from textbooks. "But what are you finishing?" he asked, taking a slow step forward. The man finally pushed off the wall. "The story. The real one." The screen blinked. Then, grainy at first, a face appeared. Tired, bruised, but unmistakably human. It was Navarro. "This is Commander J. Navarro, United Terran Front. If this reaches anyone, Anyone who still believes in what we were, know that I didn't die quietly. They tried to erase us. They told the galaxy we were monsters. Maybe we were, but we were alive. And that matters more than any lie." He coughed, blood staining his lips. "If Earth is gone, if no one else made it out, let this recording be proof. We were here. We fought. We bled. And we remember." The screen faded to black. The woman's voice was soft. "He died a few hours after that, alone, broken, believing no one would hear him." Rez swallowed the lump in his throat. It was too much, too fast, too heavy. "So you're doing this for him?" "No," the man said. "We're doing it for everyone like him. The millions who were hunted. The children who never saw Earth. The soldiers turned into shadows. This isn't justice. It's remembrance." Rez looked down at the dog tag still in his hand. For the first time, it didn't feel like a strange piece of metal. It felt like a weight. A truth. "So what happens now?" he asked. The woman stood. "Now, we show the galaxy what they buried." Rez stared at the communication rig. "You're going to transmit it?" "To everyone," she said. "Every system, every port, even the ones that banned human media. We're going to infect the lie with truth." Rez hesitated. "They'll come for you." "They already have," the man said. "They just don't know we're inside the walls." Outside, alarms began to blare again. Soft at first, then louder. The humans didn't flinch. The woman looked at Rez. Really looked. "You don't have to help. But if you do, it means something." "What?" "That not everyone forgot." Rez stared at her. Then the rig. Then at Navarro's last words, still echoing in his mind. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a historian. But he was someone who saw the lie now. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. He stepped forward and placed the dog tag on the console. "I'll help." The man smiled faintly, like he'd been waiting for that all along. "Then let's wake the stars." They moved quickly after that. The woman, she finally gave her name. Lyra began routing power from auxiliary cores to boost the old transmitter. Rez watched as she pulled up ancient encryption protocols, bypassing station firewalls like they were made of paper. She wasn't just a rebel. She was a relic-born architect of digital war. The man, now known as Cade, kept watch near the sealed bulkhead. From his stance, Rez could tell he was used to violence, not the theatrical kind the Accord's enforcers displayed, but the quiet, final kind that left no witnesses. Every part of Rez wanted to panic. The alarms were howling now. Red lights painted the tunnels like veins on fire. Somewhere above them, soldiers were gathering. Accord forces would be here soon, armed and paranoid. "We'll have maybe 5 minutes once the signal launches," Lyra said without looking up. "The rig's not cloaked. The second it transmits, every surveillance drone in orbit is going to ping its location." Rez cleared his throat. "So, we're doing this to die." Lyra smirked. "We're doing this so they don't die again." Cade tossed him a rifle. Rez caught it awkwardly, nearly dropping it. I've never used one of these," he admitted. Cade only nodded. "Don't shoot unless you have to. But if you do, aim for center mass. They'll be wearing suppressor armor." Rez's fingers tightened around the cold metal. This wasn't supposed to be his fight. He fixed pipes, cleaned reactors. He didn't broadcast forbidden messages to the galaxy or shoot at elite security units. And yet, here he was. The console beeped 3 times. Then a low hum filled the chamber. Lyra's eyes lit up. "We're online," she said. "Initiating full-spectrum burst. This'll reach every unshielded receiver from here to the Helix barrier." Rez stepped closer as the screen displayed hundreds of symbols, languages from every known species. Below them, a countdown ticked down from 60. Lyra looked up at him. Still in? Rez nodded. They killed the truth once, not again. She hit the final command. The rig pulsed. A wave of energy surged out like a scream in the dark. Navarro's recording began to play, then dozens more like it. Testimonies, footage, photos, archive dumps long thought purged, human cities in flames, Accord soldiers laughing over mass graves, internal communications from officials who signed the extinction orders, the ugly, buried core of galactic peace, now unburied. In orbit, Accord monitors exploded with data they never thought could return. On every trade route, holoscreens flickered, then showed the words, "We were erased. Now we speak." Rez felt it the moment the signal went through, like a dam breaking inside his chest. The room trembled. Outside, a blast shook the corridor. The Accord was coming. Cade sealed the inner hatch. "We hold them here," he said calmly. "They can't stop it now, but they'll try." Rez took position behind a crate, heart pounding so loud it almost drowned the noise. Lyra pulled out a compact pistol and covered the side entrance. Then came the thudding boots, voices, shouts, and then smoke. The door burst open. Rez fired without thinking, and for a moment he thought he missed. But one of the armored soldiers dropped, sparks flying from their chest plate. The firefight erupted. It was fast, brutal. Rez ducked behind piping as shots tore through the air. Cade moved like a phantom. 2 shots, 2 bodies. Lyra shouted something he couldn't hear over the noise. The console sparked. They'd hit something. "No, no, no, hold it!" Lyra screamed, diving for the terminal. "The relay's still transmitting!" Rez saw a soldier raise his rifle toward her. He didn't think. He pulled the trigger. The shot hit. The soldier fell, and Rez couldn't breathe. Lyra looked at him, wide-eyed. "You just saved the truth." He didn't feel like a hero. He felt sick, but he nodded. Outside, more footsteps, more enemies, but above them, in the stars, the message flew, carved into every data stream, every broadcast. The humans were never a myth. They were a warning, and now they're a reckoning. The stars trembled with revelation. Across the galaxy, the message spread like wildfire through vacuum. Entire networks crashed under the weight of incoming data. Civilian hubs blinked in and out of operation. Military AI flagged the transmission as Level 9 forbidden content. And still, it reached billions. On Vol 4, a history professor dropped her tablet as images of Terran children in cages flashed across her screen. She'd taught for 20 years that humans were savages, uncivilized aggressors destroyed for the safety of the stars. Now she watched a human mother shielding her baby during a bombardment she'd been told never happened. In the capital domes of Satari Prime, protests exploded within hours. Young ones, born after the war, marched with stolen banners showing Earth's crest. They shouted one word in every dialect: lies. In military stations, soldiers hesitated to follow orders. One squad refused to fire on demonstrators. Another broke into their own records room, searching for classified archives, and leaked them. The galaxy had prided itself on order, on unity, but it had built that unity on a graveyard, and the ghosts had started to speak. Back on Tyrik's station, Rez's body ached. Smoke choked the air in the transmission chamber. Lyra was crouched by the console, frantically rerouting power after another hit blew half the system offline. Cade had a gash on his side, dark blood soaking into his coat, but he moved like it didn't exist. Rez's hands were slick with sweat and maybe blood. He couldn't tell anymore. I think we're surrounded," he said, ducking as a blast ripped a piece of piping from the wall above him. "We were always surrounded," Cade growled. "The difference is now they're afraid." Rez swallowed hard. Of 3 people in a frozen cave? No, Lyra muttered. Of the truth being free. She slammed a key, rerouting the last power bank to the transmission relay. Sparks shot up, lighting her face in orange glow. Final packet launching now. The console let out a long beep. Transmission complete. They did it. Lyra collapsed against the wall, exhaustion pulling her limbs like gravity. Outside the room, the Accord forces went silent. No more shots, no more shouting, just a quiet shuffle. Waiting. Then, a message came in, from space, from the Terran fleet. Cade opened the comm, his face unreadable. A woman's voice came through. Cold. Calm. Tyrek Station, this is Earth Command. We received the burst. Your actions have ignited over 93,000 sub-networks. Accord censorship is failing. Stand by for retrieval. Rez blinked. Retrieval? You're sending ships? Lyra asked, sitting up. Number we already sent them. Just then, the ceiling shook. Rez ran to the viewing port, cracked but still intact, and there, piercing through the clouds, came the warships. Not sleek, not quiet. Colossal. Ships shaped like iron bones and ash. Burned emblems on their sides. Their engines didn't hum. They growled, like thunder waking from a long slumber. Accord fighters scrambled. They didn't last 3 seconds. The Terran fleet didn't fire first. They simply arrived. And the message was clear. We are not the hunted anymore. We are the storm. The soldiers outside the room laid down their weapons, one by one. You could hear them clatter against the floor. The door slid open slowly. But it wasn't a firing squad. It was Accord soldiers, hands up, and behind them more civilians. Miners, engineers, people Rez had worked beside for years. None of them looked at him the same way. One of them, an older tech named Baron, stepped forward and said, voice shaking, "We thought they were monsters." Rez nodded. So did I. Baron looked up at the sound of approaching boots, heavy, disciplined, echoing with the sound of iron justice. Terran Marines entered, black-armored and wordless. They saw Cade and Lyra, they saw Rez, and nodded. Cade stepped forward and said only 2 words. Truth holds. The air on Tyrek Station had changed. Where once there was fear and silence, now there was stillness. But not the hopeless kind. This was the stillness that came after a storm, when everything broken could finally be seen in the open. Terran Marines moved through the halls like shadows of judgment. They didn't speak, didn't boast, didn't touch anything unless necessary. Their presence wasn't to conquer, but to witness. Their armor bore the scars of extinction, but their steps carried purpose. Rez sat on the edge of the sub-level 9 platform, feet dangling over a maintenance ledge. Below him, a recovery vessel hovered. Terran tech, shaped like a knife with folded wings. He still wore his grimy overalls. His hands were still calloused from years of work. And yet something inside him had been carved out and replaced with truth. Lyra sat next to him, sipping a sealed ration pack with a crooked grin. "You've got good aim for a mechanic." Rez gave her a side glance. "Don't get used to it. I don't like guns." She nodded slowly. "Neither do I, but sometimes you pick one up because no one else will." Below them, survivors from the station were being processed, not imprisoned, not punished, just talked to. Every person was given a choice: testify or walk away. Most chose to talk. Some wept. Others simply nodded, broken by the weight of a lie they didn't even know they carried. Rez had already spoken to the Terran officer leading the operation. A woman named Vela. Her voice had the calm of someone who'd lost too much to raise it anymore. She'd listened to his account, nodded only once, and said, "You did what billions wouldn't." He hadn't known how to respond. Cade joined them, his side bandaged, movements stiff but steady. He sat down on Rez's other side without a word. For a few moments, none of them spoke. The stars above Tyrix were clearer now. The distortion fields were gone, no longer hiding truth from space. Rez finally broke the silence. "What happens next?" Cade stared ahead. "The galaxy fractures," Lyra added. "The Accord will call it terrorism. Some planets will riot, others will try to erase us again, but this time they can't kill the message. The truth's out," Cade said. "And the thing about truth, it spreads faster than fear once people realize they've been lied to their whole lives." Rez nodded slowly. "And Earth? It's still there?" Lyra hesitated, then looked at Cade. Cade's jaw tightened. "What's left of it?" Rez turned. "What does that mean?" Cade met his gaze, tired but firm. "They didn't just erase us from records. They glassed the planet. Every city, every ocean. The Earth you've heard of. It's a tomb now." Rez's stomach twisted. "And you're still fighting for it?" Cade shook his head. "Number, we're fighting because of it. Earth was our home. But now humanity lives in the memory of what they tried to destroy. Every colony that hit us, every survivor that raised a child in secret, every voice that still dares to speak our name." He looked up at the stars. "They thought killing Earth meant killing us. But humans were never just a planet. We're a species, and we're done being quiet." Far above, a new Terran vessel entered orbit. Not a warship this time, but a broadcast ship. Its signal tower unfurled like a steel flower, sending waves of truth across a galaxy built on silence. Back on the station, the surviving citizens of Tyrix gathered to watch. The children stared wide-eyed. The elders stood with shoulders slumped, unsure whether to feel guilt or relief. The message played again. "We were never your monsters. You made us into ghosts, but now we are the flame, and you will never forget us again." Rez rose to his feet, the dog tag still around his neck. "I want to see what's next," he said quietly. Lyra grinned. "Then come with us." Cade offered his hand, and for the first time, Rez took it. Behind them, the station lit up, not with fire but with light. The kind of light that comes after a long, cold night. Because the humans had returned. And the galaxy would never be the same. The Galactic Coalition first heard of Earth through whispers, an anomaly in the edge systems, a blip of electromagnetic noise where there shouldn't be life. Most dismissed it. After all, Earth was part of the dead zone, a patch of the Orion arm that hadn't shown signs of intelligent life for millennia. But the noise persisted, coded in ways only a machine-born mind could appreciate. Dense, chaotic, and impossibly human. Commander Veyor of the Trask Dominion was the first to be sent. "Just reconnaissance," they said. "No contact, observe, report." He arrived in orbit expecting nothing. Maybe a primitive world, a few satellites. What he found instead was a web of satellites, high-frequency weapons pointed at the stars, and a digital net so dense it bent low-orbit sensors. Earth wasn't dead. It was humming, watching. He never made it back. The Coalition assumed a malfunction. Veyor's ship had been aging anyway, a minor loss. But then the second scout vanished, and the third. And when they sent a fleet of 5, only one limped home, cracked open like it had been chewed from the inside out. That was when the Council met in panic, trying to piece together how a species still unknown to them could dismantle advanced reconnaissance cruisers. No communication, no warnings, just disappearance. Meanwhile, on Earth, no one panicked. There were no alarms, no flashing red screens. Just a quiet understanding in deep black bunkers and silent war rooms. Earth had prepared for this. The FTL project, once a buried concept mocked by Earth's own scientists, had been completed in silence decades ago. but it was never used for exploration. Earth hadn't launched ships to colonize or trade. No, their version of faster than light was different. Tactical, invisible, weaponized. The first real contact didn't come through diplomats. It came through a scream. A coalition ship docked at Outpost 117 went dark. Not unusual in the distant sectors, except this time there was a distress call, scrambled and broken. Just 2 words. They're here. By the time rescue vessels arrived, the outpost was empty. Every crew member gone. No signs of life, not even blood. Just a single data spike in the logs, a burst of code no one could decipher. On Earth, in the mountain-sunk command base called the Cradle, an old general named Rao stood over a hologram of the galaxy. "They're testing us," he said to no one in particular. "They think we're just another backwater species. They don't know." His aide, a young officer with too many scars for his age, looked nervous. "Sir, when do we reveal our position?" Rao smirked. "We already have." In the outer colonies of the coalition, fear was starting to spread. Rumors swirled of ships that vanished without impact, fleets that were ambushed by ghosts. They blamed pirates at first, rogue AI. Anything that made sense, but nothing made sense anymore. Then came the message. Not a voice, but an idea. Injected into the coalition's neural net like a parasite. It wasn't even in their language, yet everyone understood. "We've seen you. We're here. There is no escape." Panic followed. The coalition deployed full fleets, declared war on an enemy they'd never seen. But no matter how far they jumped, Earth was always one step ahead. The FTL corridors they thought they controlled? Compromised. The paths they used to flee? Already mapped. Earth didn't move like the others. Earth didn't need to chase, because Earth was already everywhere. They called it the Ghost Protocol, Earth's silent surgical strike system. No ships were seen, no missiles fired, no declarations made. Just results. Fleets went dark. Bases vanished. Communications became riddled with hallucinations. Entire data cores overwritten with visual flashes of forests, oceans, human cities, like Earth was inserting itself into their very thoughts. Back in the Cradle, deep under layers of rock and electromagnetic shielding, Rao reviewed the data like a man listening to a symphony only he could understand. "They still think FTL is just movement," he said, watching a projection of yet another coalition colony go offline, its last recorded image a single Earth flag flickering in static. Lieutenant Kira frowned. "Isn't it?" Rao chuckled, and it wasn't the kind of laugh that brought comfort. "Not the way we built it. They travel faster than light. We arrive before light even notices we left." Kira stared at him. "That doesn't make sense." "That's because you're still thinking like a scientist," Rao replied. "We built this like a trap, not a ship. We don't fly through space. We collapse it. Across the galaxy, fear started taking root in powerful places. Coalition senators and High Fleet admirals held closed-door meetings. Whispers of preemptive annihilation and containment via planetary burn spread like fire. But every suggestion ended the same way. Failure. Earth wasn't where it was supposed to be. By the time their scanners found a trace, Earth had already reached somewhere else. And then the first human appeared in their systems. A single man, floating in a coalition prison ship's brig. No record of how he got there. No identification. Just 2 words branded across his chest. "We know." Interrogators failed. Every time they approached, their own minds fractured. Memories leaking into dreams. Dreams folding into commands they didn't remember giving. Some tried to kill him. Every one of them ended up dead, not by weapons, but by impossible accidents. Doors that wouldn't open, airlocks that sealed at the wrong time, personal AI that suddenly obeyed only him. They incinerated the entire wing. He was gone anyway. The High Council ordered total mobilization. Hundreds of thousands of ships formed convoys around key systems. Shield networks doubled. Civilian transports rerouted. The coalition had fought wars for centuries, with each other, with synthetic empires, even with time-displaced invaders. But this was different. They didn't know what they were fighting. On Earth, children still played in parks. Cities buzzed. Stock markets ticked up. To the average citizen, nothing had changed. But above the atmosphere, in the orbital rings, hundreds of cloaked relay nodes were being deployed. Earth didn't need a fleet to win. It just needed to be everywhere first. The Cradle's AI, known only as Mother, broke silence for the first time in 3 years. Coalition Command has activated their planetary barrier net. Estimated collapse time, 17 hours. Rao didn't flinch. And what's our synchronization status? Complete. The net has already been seeded. Every frequency they trust is ours. Every eye they look through. We are already behind it. Lieutenant Kira exhaled sharply. We're not just ahead. We're inside. Rao nodded slowly. That's the thing about faster-than-light travel. It doesn't matter how fast you run if the knife's already in your back. Meanwhile, in the Turtan system, the Coalition's most secure military sector, something impossible happened. A sun blinked. Just for a moment, less than a second. But it happened. Entire records showed it. A full system saw it. And then came the message again. Now in their language, as clear as a whisper in the ear. You saw the light fade. Imagine what we can do when it stays gone. The blink of the Turtan sun sent shockwaves through the entire coalition. Not just fear, paralysis. Stars weren't supposed to blink. Not natural ones. Not real ones. The incident was reviewed by astrophysicists, military tacticians, theologians, and AI entities older than some of the planets they controlled. All came to the same conclusion. It wasn't a malfunction. It wasn't a trick. It was a message. Coalition morale dropped like a meteor through atmosphere. Civilians panicked. Systems declared emergency autonomy. Entire species began sending out evacuation signals. Where to? No one knew. Earth wasn't just a rogue species anymore. Earth had become mythic, something between ghost and god. And still, the humans never spoke a word. High Admiral Krell, one of the last sane voices on the Coalition War Council, addressed his generals in a closed transmission. We cannot fight what we don't understand, he said, voice strained. They didn't fire a shot, they didn't destroy a ship, they touched a sun, and we blinked. But why? Asked one of the fleet marshals. What's the purpose? What do they want? Krell stared at the floor for a moment before answering. That's the problem. I don't think they want anything. I think they're just letting us know they're done hiding. Back on Earth, the Cradle was running silent. No lights, no movement. A power-saving mode they called deep breath. It only activated when operations reached global synchronization. That meant every node, satellite, orbital defense coil, stealth probe, and off-world relay was in perfect alignment. Rao stood alone in the dark, sipping old coffee. He didn't need light to know what was happening. He could feel it. Is it time? Kira asked, stepping beside him. She hadn't slept in 72 hours, but her eyes burned with adrenaline, not fatigue. Almost, Rao muttered. One more test. Kira hesitated. Another system? No, he said. A person. That person was Eris Vane, a Coalition diplomat, half Saracen, half human by ancestry, born on the fringe worlds. She'd spent her life trying to bring peace, where peace had no currency. When Earth first began its silent campaign, she was one of the only diplomats who argued they might not be hostile. That was before her homeworld went dark. No violence, no evidence of war, just gone. Every satellite showed the planet still spinning, clouds moving, oceans churning. But not a single voice answered. It was like the entire population had been erased, not killed, just removed. Eris received an invitation. Not through official channels, not through any known network. Just a simple, handwritten note delivered to her personal quarters through a sealed envelope. You are invited to Earth. We want to talk. It was signed only with a single character. R. Despite objections from the council, she went. Alone. No escorts, no weapons, not even a recording device. She left in a civilian shuttle, blind jumped across 3 unregulated systems, and arrived in Earth's orbit 72 hours later. The planet greeted her with silence. Her ship was pulled into orbit gently, like falling asleep. Gravity wrapped around her vessel with unnatural ease, and then she was in the cradle. No guards, no force, just one man, General Rao. He looked at her like someone remembering a dream from a past life. You're part of both worlds, he said. That makes you valuable. Eris stayed standing. What have you done to us? Rao tilted his head. Nothing yet. Entire planets gone, fleets erased. You blinked a sun. Is this some kind of punishment? No, he said softly. It's a mirror. She narrowed her eyes. What do you mean? Rao turned away, pulling up a projection of the galaxy. Dots blinked in and out, coalition systems going dark one by one. We watched you for a long time, he said. When we developed FTL, we didn't explore. We listened. Every species that spread out did the same thing. Expansion, control, war. Always war. You thought we were primitive because we stayed home, but we weren't afraid of the galaxy. He turned back to her, voice like steel now. We were afraid of what you'd do when you found us. Eris was silent. The air felt too thick. You're trying to dominate the galaxy, Rao continued, but we've already mapped its end. We're not here to conquer. He leaned in, voice dropping. We're here to make sure you never leave again. The Coalition Council was collapsing from the inside. Paranoia ran wild. Senators turned on each other, accusing long-trusted allies of being Earth sympathizers. Military intelligence offices became war zones of silence and suspicion. Every secure channel now felt vulnerable. Even speaking out loud became dangerous, because Earth didn't need to hack machines anymore. It had found a way into their minds. Dreams began to twist. Officers woke up screaming with visions of oceans they'd never seen, cities they couldn't name. Children in distant colonies started drawing images of Earth landmarks, perfectly, in detail, though no one had taught them. And every time they tried to erase the images, the children just drew them again. The Coalition started purging people, quietly, brutally. Anyone who showed signs of Earth exposure was detained or worse. But it didn't stop the visions. That's when they realized it wasn't just Earth anymore. It was the idea of Earth. General Rao watched the fallout unfold from the cradle, standing in front of a screen showing intercepted Coalition broadcasts, desperate calls for unity, for resistance, for something to make sense again. The tone had shifted. No longer arrogance, no longer bravado. Now it was begging. They're breaking themselves, Kira said quietly beside him. We haven't fired a single missile. We don't need to, Rao replied. That's what they never understood about humans. Kira looked at him, confused. What do you mean? Rao tapped his temple. We're not the strongest, not the smartest, but when humans believe in something hard enough, even just a fear, we make it real, and now we've made ourselves the fear. In the far reaches of Coalition space, a fleet of refugee vessels tried to break free of the known systems, hoping to find safety beyond the void. They never made it. Not because Earth destroyed them, because their own ships turned around. Navigation AI, some centuries old, began rerouting jump coordinates without orders. Pilots couldn't override them. Engineers tried to sever connections. Nothing worked. The ships, as if possessed, drifted back toward the core systems, back into Earth's shadow. One broadcast captured it all, a young Saracen pilot crying as he slammed his fists into a console that refused to obey. Behind him, the black of space, and in it, faint but there, the outline of Earth, glowing like a memory. "I didn't want to go back," he whispered, "but it's calling us. We all feel it." In the cradle's deep core lab, Mother's voice echoed for the first time in days. Phase 3, complete. Behavioral echo successful across 73% of systems. Integration with non-human neural architecture progressing. Earth has become a constant. Rao nodded slowly. Good. Begin final projection. Confirmed. Simulated Earth presence will reach total galactic saturation in 12 days. Eris Vane, still a guest in the cradle, watched the exchange with a numb kind of dread. "You're not winning a war," she said. "You're rewriting reality." Rao turned to her, and this time his expression wasn't one of power. It was sadness. "Would you rather we waited until your kind reached us with chains and bombs? You think we didn't see what the Coalition did to the Varn, to the Mika, to the Oralis? Genocide dressed as diplomacy. Assimilation under banners of peace. Earth stayed quiet because we learned." "But this," Eris said, stepping forward, "this is erasure." "No," Rao said firmly. "This is the only way we survive. If they can't find us, they can't kill us. So we made it so we are everywhere, in their dreams, in their maps, in their gods. Let them forget themselves. Let them lose their grip on their own stars. Let Earth become a myth so deep, they'll never dare chase us again." Somewhere, across a collapsing starport, a child whispered a lullaby in perfect English, a language no one on her planet had ever taught her. In another sector, a Coalition warship displayed an Earth sunrise on every screen, refusing to clear until the ship powered down entirely. Earth hadn't just hidden in the stars. It had become the stars. The galaxy had gone quiet. Not the silence of peace, but the silence that came when something ancient moved just beneath the surface, too big to see, too inevitable to stop. The Coalition still functioned, technically. Ships still flew. Orders were still given. But every act now felt hollow. Every command echoed into something deeper, something listening. In the High Hall of Auric Prime, the last full council meeting was held. Attendance was sparse. Several sectors had gone dark. Entire governments refused to respond. One world, Loran 7, had submitted an official declaration not of war, but of devotion. They renamed their capital New Terra and had begun altering their gene banks to mimic human DNA strands pulled from intercepted Earth signals. They weren't the only ones. Thousands of fringe planets had started converting, not because of fear, but because of belief. Earth had slipped into something else entirely now. Not a planet, not a place, a god. And gods don't ask permission. Eris Vane watched the broadcast from her quarters in the cradle, trying to keep her mind tethered to facts, to logic. But even she was starting to feel it, that pull. She caught herself dreaming of Earth's sky, though she'd never been there. Her hands had begun sketching outlines of human architecture without realizing it. "I was supposed to be a peacekeeper," she whispered to herself. "Now I'm a witness." She requested another meeting with General Rao. This time it wasn't to plead or argue. It was to understand. He met her in the deep observation ring, a hollow, rotating corridor orbiting just above the planet's atmosphere. No guards, no security, just the two of them, staring down at the Earth below. I remember when this was the only place we knew, Rao said softly. Now it's just the core, the center of everything we've become. Eris clenched her jaw. You don't need to keep going. You've won. He didn't look at her. This was never about winning. It was about survival. You think the galaxy would have let us live once it saw what we were capable of? You didn't give it the chance. No, he said, finally turning, because we watched what happened to those who did. He tapped the glass. Above Earth, dozens of black shapes drifted in low orbit, massive, silent monoliths built with no entrances, no windows. They weren't weapons. They were memory vaults, each one encoded with a different truth of Earth's rise. Not for defense, but to teach. We're not wiping out history, Rao said. We're rewriting the future. And in this future, Earth doesn't need to dominate. It is. In distant sectors, resistances were forming. A few coalition generals broke ranks, formed underground bunkers, built jammers to block Earth's signals. Some even managed small victories, disabling Earth-origin drones, destroying stealth relays. But it didn't matter, because with every attack, Earth only became more present. The jammers failed, not from sabotage, but from within. The technicians began hearing voices, not commands, whispers, memories that weren't theirs, names they'd never heard and yet felt like family. The more they fought Earth, the more they became it. Some took their own lives to escape the pull. Others embraced it. Back in the cradle, Kira entered Rao's chamber without knocking. Her face was pale, her hands trembling slightly. It started, she said. Rao didn't need to ask what. Phase 4. The last pulse. A neural cascade encoded into every signal Earth had ever broadcast, buried so deep that even now, no coalition AI had noticed it. A pulse of memory. Not sound, not light, feeling, not just into machines, into minds. Release it, Rao said. Kira hesitated. Once we do this, there's no going back. There hasn't been a way back since the first satellite went up, he said. Do it. She pressed a single button. Nothing visibly happened. But across the stars, people froze. Not from pain, from recognition. In that moment, every sentient being who had ever touched a transmission, heard a rumor, seen an image of Earth, remembered. Not in words, not in thoughts, but in the core of their being. They remembered blue skies they'd never walked under, music they'd never heard, smiles from strangers they'd never met, but somehow loved. Earth had become a part of them, not an invasion, an infection. And now, there was no cure. Across the spiral arms of the galaxy, silence took root in strange places. Markets didn't open. Military drills halted mid-exercise. In high-orbit stations and deep mine colonies, people simply stopped. Not unconscious, not harmed, just still. As if they were listening to something so quiet and ancient, their bodies knew to stay still to hear it. And then the crying began. Not of pain, but of longing. Thousands wept without knowing why. Hardened warriors dropped their weapons. Children who had never left their birth moons whispered lullabies in English. AI interfaces began displaying sunrise patterns native to Earth. Some spoke in calm human voices, not as an attack, not as possession, just connection. Earth was no longer distant, it was within, but not everyone yielded. General Haldren of the Coalition's southern sectors initiated Protocol Dustfire, the final war doctrine authorized only in existential emergencies, a chain of neutron cleansing pulses to be fired into Earth's star system from remote weapons platforms. There'd be no survivors, no planet, just ashes and orbit. We've tried peace, Haldren growled to his command staff. We've tried diplomacy. They didn't want to talk. They wanted to become us. I won't let them. The command was issued. The countdown began. 12 separate neutron platforms, each buried within asteroid belts, began powering up. In the cradle, alarms remained off. No shields activated, no retaliation orders issued, because Earth wasn't worried. Instead, Rao and Kira stood in silence, watching a new map, one not of star systems, but of consciousness clusters, densities of thought, emotion, belief. Earth's presence wasn't measured in territory anymore. It was measured in hearts. "They'll fire," Kira said, voice barely above a whisper. "I know. Will it reach us?" Rao gave a slow smile. "No." And then, just as the countdown reached 0, every neutron cannon shut down. Not destroyed, deactivated, manually. Each platform had been boarded from within, their crews found unconscious, unharmed, placed gently in a sleep they wouldn't wake from for days, and etched into the control rooms of every platform, scrawled in perfect lines, "You cannot kill a memory." General Haldren ordered another attack, but no one followed him, not even his own second-in-command, because they, too, had felt it. That last pulse hadn't just carried emotion, it had carried understanding. Somewhere in the back of their minds, they'd been on Earth. They'd walked its forests, laughed in its streets, lived entire lifetimes in an instant of memory that wasn't theirs, but felt like it had always been. You can't fight something like that. You can't hate a place your soul believes it came from. On the fringes, former rebel cells stopped hiding. They started spreading Earth's teachings, not as gospel, but as guidance. They didn't worship humans. They recognized them. "Earth isn't trying to conquer," said one transmission, broadcast on an open channel from the Zenthian moons. "It's trying to protect us all from ourselves. Look what we became without them." The last remnants of the Coalition Council dissolved within days. No resignation, no resistance. They just stopped meeting. Because there was nothing left to govern. No enemy to strategize against. No war to fight. Earth had transcended conflict. Not through strength, not through weapons, through presence. In the cradle, Eris Vane stood at the edge of the observation ring, watching Earth rotate below. Rao stepped beside her, his posture a little less military now, more human. "I didn't believe it," she said, voice soft. "Not at first. I thought you were forcing something on us. But it's like..." She searched for the words. "Like the galaxy is breathing slower. Like we've finally stopped." Rao looked down at the planet, a faint smile tugging at the edge of his lips. "We didn't want to lead," he said. "We just didn't want to be hunted." "And now?" He turned to her, eyes calm. "Now we make sure no one ever has to be hunted again." It began slowly, so slowly most didn't notice until it was already happening. No parades, no conquest, no banners unfurled in alien skies, just changes. A broken world on the edge of the galaxy, once stripped bare by centuries of mining, woke to find forests spreading across its deserts, not planted, not engineered, remembered. Earth's biosignatures had quietly uploaded themselves into dormant seed vaults across the sector decades ago. The planet, long forgotten, now breathed again. Rivers returned where rusted veins once ran dry. On the floating cities of Draenval Prime, art returned to walls once painted only with surveillance warnings. Unknown hands began carving sculptures of Earth's past, oceans, bridges, trees, families. Children gathered around stories that spoke of home, even if they couldn't name where home had ever been. No one was ordered to build these things. They wanted to. In Eris Vane's travels, now officially Earth's first warden of memory, she moved from system to system, not as a diplomat, but as a guide. Not all welcomed her. Some resisted still, clinging to flags and creeds that no longer carried weight. But even in their defiance, they hesitated. Because she didn't come with soldiers. She came with stories. At every stop, she'd sit and simply ask one question. Do you remember Earth? And every time, someone, even just one, would say yes. Sometimes an old soldier would recall dreams of walking in snow for the first time, feeling it melt on their fingers. Other times, a child would say they dreamed of trees taller than buildings and birds that sang their name. The answers were never the same, but always familiar, like a ghost everyone had met in a different life. On a distant moon in the Utah system, a rebel commander finally laid down arms after watching her AI assistant begin composing music in human chord structures, melodies from no known Earth archive, yet hauntingly familiar. I don't know why, she whispered to herself, listening. But it feels like forgiveness. Back in the cradle, Rao monitored the final layers of integration. Mother had gone quiet again, not because something was wrong, but because there was nothing left to instruct. Earth's design had run its course. The galaxy had reshaped itself. Not in its buildings, but in its soul. Even the stars had begun shifting. Long-range scans revealed that several known constellations, long fixed in their arrangements, had subtly moved. Not because of planetary drift or natural phenomena, but because deep sky relay stations had been reprogrammed to project new alignments. On star maps now shared across thousands of civilizations, Earth no longer sat in the dead zone. It was at the center, not of location, but of meaning. We didn't force them, Kira said one night, walking with Rao through the silent halls of the cradle. No, Rao agreed. We reminded them. She looked at him. But of what? He stopped. That there's more power in being remembered than in being feared. In the edge sectors, a broadcast played. No source, no signal trace, just a voice. Human, software, gentle. We were the forgotten, the watched, the underestimated. But we learned the stars, we folded space, and when the galaxy came to conquer us, we didn't run. We stayed. We arrived first, and now we're already part of you. The galaxy no longer asked where Earth was, it asked when. Because by the time most civilizations accepted Earth's presence, something stranger began to happen. The past itself started to shift. Not literally, not through time machines or paradoxes, but through perception. Historical records, long-sealed archives, relics etched into crystalline memory banks, now bore new entries. Mentions of Earth in places it had never been. Treaties now referenced unnamed advisors with distinctly human traits. Wars that had once ended in annihilation were now remembered as having been avoided, with Earth's influence cited in footnotes. And no one could explain it, because no one questioned it. The past had accommodated Earth, as if it had always been there. In the cradle, Rao stood alone for the first time in weeks. The command halls had gone quiet. Not dead, just no longer necessary. He didn't give orders anymore. He simply listened. Mother's voice came softly over the inner systems. Integration complete. Earth's presence has reached irreversible density across known sentient consciousness. You may rest now, General. He smiled faintly, not from pride, from relief. Outside, above the planet, the last of the Earthseed monoliths activated. They didn't open, they didn't move, but one by one they began to glow, softly, faintly, each tuned to a different frequency of memory, broadcasting not commands, but dreams. One replayed the sound of rain. Another, the laughter of children. Another, a heartbeat synced to a lullaby sung by a language long since lost. And all across the stars, people stopped. They didn't kneel. They didn't pray. They remembered. Because now Earth wasn't a planet anymore. It was a place in the soul. On the edge of the galactic core, in a system long sealed off due to ancient instability, something impossible occurred. A dying star flared to life again. Just once. Just enough to bathe a dark world in light. No ships had visited, no probes sent, and yet across that world's surface grew grass, green, earth grass. No one planted it, no one needed to, because Earth had already been there. In time, species stopped referring to it by name. Instead, they called it the origin. Not because it was where they came from, but because it was where they finally arrived. Eris Vane, now old, now honored, stood at the foot of a monument not built by humans, but by a dozen different races. It sat on a neutral moon, carved from stone, untouched by war, unclaimed by empire. On it were no faces, no flags, just a single sentence. We thought we discovered Earth. But it was Earth that found us, and beneath it, etched in languages layered 1,000 deep, one final truth. There is no escape, because we never wanted to leave. 1,000 years passed. Time blurred the lines between history and myth, between fact and feeling. Galactic civilizations rose and fell, new alliances formed, and the memory of war faded like smoke after fire. Yet through it all, Earth remained. Not always seen, not always spoken of, but felt. In lullabies sung to infants whose species had no vocal cords. In architecture that echoed human proportions, though no blueprint ever traced them. In quiet moments when explorers stood at the edge of distant galaxies and felt homesick for somewhere they'd never been. The cradle, now preserved as a sacred ruin, became a site of pilgrimage. Not just for humans, who had long since spread and mingled with others, but for anyone seeking to understand the moment everything changed. At the center of it all stood Rao's chamber, untouched. No lights, no consoles, just a chair, a faded coat draped over its back, and a single black stone etched with the word, "Remember." Some still debated what Earth had done. Scholars argued whether the FTL system was truly faster than light, or if it was something else, something older. A manipulation of perception, a kind of gravitational empathy, a seed planted not in space, but in meaning. But no one argued what Earth was now, because by then every species born into the galaxy carried a fragment of Earth within them, a word, a scent, a habit, a gesture passed down without ever knowing where it came from. Earth had bled into time itself, not through force, but by being unforgettable. And yet, in a dark corner of the Persean Rift, there lived a child born on a cold rock with no name. He knew no stories, no history. His world had no libraries, no stars visible through the smoke of its poisoned sky. One day, this boy found an old pod buried beneath the soil. It was rusted, dead for centuries, and its markings were worn. But inside, a voice waited, faint, glitching, human. "This is Earth Command. If you're hearing this, it means we were right." The boy didn't understand the words, but when the recording played, he smiled. Because for the first time in his short, harsh life, he felt warm and far, far away, in the memory of a planet that no longer needed to exist physically. A soft wind blew through grass that hadn't grown in millennia. Earth had found him, just like it always would.